Hey folks, thanks for tuning in. Sorry for not uploading in a while. I've been busy developing the game and have been kind of going through some changes with the overall structure and design philosophy of the game. So, if you recall in the first devlog, I mentioned that I wanted to make an extraction shooter similar to Tarkov or Arena Breakout, but with roguelike elements. Since then, I've come to realize that with the way AI and overall single player gameplay works in those games, it's not very well suited for a roguelike. And also, it's not the game that I necessarily want to make. So, since then, I've kind of changed it to be a roguelike that implements certain extraction shooter mechanics, such as the overall gun feel and looting and economy system, while leading a lot more heavily into the power fantasy of a roguelike. And so there's a few changes that I kind of want to show. You can already see one of them standing right in front of me, but I'll cover that in a bit. That just kind of cover a host of things that I've changed. So first and foremost, I feel like I do this every devlog. It's just a tradition at this point, but I've made the guns better. So you'll notice when I equip this, there's just a lot more feedback, as well as the animation looks pretty good. Overall animations and gun models and everything have been improved to kind of match the realistic kind of graphics and setting that I want for the game. So yeah, you can see that the reload works pretty well here. I can even show you the shadow, and you can see, so that's a different animation because the gun was empty, but everything connects exactly as you'd expect, and they look very crisp. You can still do it while aiming, and everything works. One thing that I forgot to mention that's probably fairly noticeable here is the fact that the character is no longer just a human military man. That's also just kind of like leaning into the whole power fantasy roguelike element of it. I wanted the character to have more of a justification for being able to do crazy feats and have crazy abilities. And so you're now a cybernetically enhanced ninja samurai hybrid of sorts. And that comes with having a katana. So this is another thing I've added. This is like the first kind of like leading into sci-fi or fantasy or non-realistic thing that I've directly implemented into the game with the express purpose of just kind of like being cool or fun to play with. So you can swing it. You can also lean to change the direction of the swing. Currently, there's just one swing animation because it's a prototype, but in the future, you'll be able to do a lot more, such as like stab attacks or other things like that, just to give the melee a little bit more of a game feel. You'll also notice that the character is able to jump a lot higher and move generally faster. All of this just contributing to more of the power fantasy. So alongside with better guns, I'm also implementing kind of like variety of guns that are just cooler or different. So it's the lever action. Even though it shoots the same rounds as kind of like an AR would, like the M4, you'll notice it does a lot more damage than the M4, and that's just because, well, it's a bit of risk reward. So it's a single shot, and you have to manually lever it each time that you shoot it, but you get a much higher crit chance as well as proc chance on the gun. Last thing I kind of want to show in terms of firearm animations before I start getting into the roguelike elements is the revolver. So I've completely overhauled the way animations are kind of like made and then implemented on the character as well as by blending them. What that allows for me to do is like have very good precision in terms of how the animations look, and so hopefully I can get like a much more realistic and tactical feel for the game. Yeah, I'm pretty proud of how that animation looks. Equipping and unequipping a weapon also looks pretty good. All of the hands kind of like go where they're expected to. And so yeah, that turned out pretty good. The next thing I kind of want to cover is all of the different roguelike abilities that I've been adding to the game in order to just let the player have kind of like variety of builds and stuff like that. So the first one I want to show here is called Wolf's Revenge. This is a reference to Sekiro. And so what happens is you're going to shoot an opponent, and it's going to spawn a bunch of ninjas. I'll do that in slow motion as well. And they just do look at an attack. I think that effect looks pretty cool. And overall, you'll see kind of how it all looks, because like individually, none of the abilities are necessarily that special or kind of like, you know, knock your socks off. But when they all start chaining together, it's a sight to behold for sure. So the next one I'm calling Arc Ball. The reasoning for that will be pretty self-evident. It spawns a ball above the enemy that'll actually track the enemy if they were moving, and it just zaps random kind of like locations or enemies in the area. This one though is unique in the sense that while the Wolf's Revenge would not proc other abilities, Arc Ball can't proc any other abilities that you have equipped on your weapon. Knockback is another new one. This one is not nearly as flashy as the other ones, but definitely pretty useful. So if you're getting hoarded, the idea is you can have knockback on any of your attachments and just kind of get some space from enemies. Imagine this will be a very useful attachment or ability, I mean, as you progress in the game and maybe you don't have enough wave clear or something like that. The last one I want to show is Split Shot. This is one of the two that were originally already demonstrated, but I've just kind of like reworked it to look and feel a lot better. So let's just see, you know, shoots out like that. There's a little bit of a delay between them, and that should just help with game feel. And so now I kind of want to show what chaining looks like. So if I just put kind of like every attachment that I have on the weapon at once, and then I shoot, you can notice that it kind of chains, and it leads to like really cool interactions between all of the different abilities. This took a really long time to like implement and get right, but I'm pretty happy with the state it's in now. Because you can imagine, as you kind of like get much later in a build with many more abilities than this, you'll have kind of just like crazy effect chains going off and kind of like get that roguelike feel. Also, one thing to note, and this is something that I'm open to suggestions on, but essentially the sword won't just be a melee. I wanted it to have a little bit more usefulness than that. So what I've kind of done is I've allowed for the sword to consume attachments. So for example, if I have like a suppressor that has split shot, I could drag it onto the katana, and this isn't implemented currently, but the idea would be that the katana would essentially destroy the item, and based on the level of the ability you had, it would have a higher chance of permanently gaining that ability on the sword itself. You can kind of see that in action. I've just hard-coded a few different abilities on there, namely Knockback, Wolf's Revenge, and Arc Ball. And you can see that the sword procs it. I've also kind of inspired heavily by kind of Arkham games, a hit stop mechanic. So if you notice, the sword kind of pauses on enemies, and the enemies also pause for a bit and kind of play animations when hit, and it allows for like a much more weighty feel to the combat. There aren't sound effects yet, so you'll have to just imagine them, but rest assured they will sound very cool. I think overall the graphical fidelity of the game looks really good. That's mostly due to the engine, though. That's not anything that I've done. But yeah, another thing I wanted to show is there is a mostly feature complete, or I wouldn't say mostly, but I'd say like halfway there, settings menu. So there's a lot of things I can do. I can go and I can change the FPS if for some reason you wanted to do that. That is something you could do. Generally speaking, I think people would rather reduce the graphical quality than limit their FPS at 30, because that looks pretty choppy. So I'm going to turn that off. But I really wanted to make sure that this game would be accessible to a lot of players that don't necessarily have the highest end machines. So all of these graphical settings work as would be expected. And if I unlimited the FPS, you'll notice that they do actually lead to like significant FPS gains. So at the lowest settings, I'm getting like above 200, or like hovering around that 200 mark. Or if I go to the highest settings, you'll see it's about like less than half. But basically this should allow for people that kind of want to play with the highest settings, like get like the really cool graphical and visual fidelity. They should be able to do that. And for others, they can just reduce it. You can pause the game and everything too. That works as expected. Yeah, nothing else to cover here. Audio is not functional at all. I had to implement that through kind of like different audio settings in my actual sound cues. Controls also not, but gameplay you can change some stuff in. What else? Let's see. Yeah, I've made a main menu that I think looks relatively decent. It looks pretty good, but I've also been kind of working on a fairly robust tutorial section for this game. I'm not going to show all of it because the plan is to release this on Steam soon, with just like a free-to-play, accessible to everyone tutorial, just so they can get a feel of the game and get feedback. But you'll notice the tutorial has kind of keyboard-based inputs that just pop up on the top left corner for things you could do. And then I've also implemented kind of videos that you can watch in the tutorial itself to understand different mechanics of the game. So that would look kind of like this. Idea here is that for more Tarkov specific or kind of like extraction shooter specific mechanics that not everyone would really understand just from the get go. You wouldn't have to just do trial and error to understand, but you could just watch videos and do so. I won't show anything further than that for the tutorial because I want you guys to experience it for yourselves. But yeah, that's about it. The stash works. Everything is like updated to the new UI. I have a pretty good chain of inheritance set up, so any future UI I make should be very simple. It's kind of like be the same as this. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. I appreciate your guys' support.